If you don't have a vision, it's very hard for people to buy into what you're selling. You've got to be able to communicate. They need the structure. They need to see your vision and why it's structured this way. But then they also need to know how they individually can be successful within that structure. And mediocrity doesn't lead to success. Mediocrity doesn't lead to me being able to feed my children and feed my wife and keep my house and pay the bills, Now, if you want to be a consistent group, a consistent team, the levels of which you train have to be higher than what you play on a Saturday. And don't rush to become a head coach. Learn, grow, take as much information as you can. And if you feel you're ready to be a head coach, then, you're obviously ready, but don't rush.
Hello coaches, welcome back to another Modern Soccer Coach interview. It's easy to put a coaching philosophy on a PowerPoint. It's easy to put a tactical game model on a PowerPoint and say, I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. It's a lot harder to do it in person, and it gets even more difficult at the professional level. Today we're going to talk about that there. What's the reality of coaching and what's the theory of coaching? What's the difference? How do you manage it? How do you become successful in maneuvering around all those different variables? Mark Briggs joins us. He's had phenomenal success over here with Sac Republic. He's going to talk about that. He's going to talk about his approach to coaching, some brilliant stuff around recruitment, culture, and tactical planning as well. Before we start, as always, please like, please subscribe, and please make sure you register for the upcoming set piece webinar, free set piece webinar. Don't miss it. Michelle Aragona from FC Midland, first team set piece coach, one of the top teams in the world using data, working on set pieces, and he's going to share the secrets to success with that there. It's going to be brilliant. Don't forget to sign up. It's on the link below. I hope to see you there. Thanks for the support. Here's Mark. Enjoy. Mark, thanks so much for joining me today. Finally got you on the Modern Soccer Coach podcast. Excited to chat.
That's it, mate. Thank you. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it. Been a huge fan.
But where I want to take this conversation is going from the ideal world of football and the realistic aspect of it. We talk a lot about player development. What is the player going to look like tomorrow? What should the player look like today? The demands of the game. But I wanted to get your advice and your insight on what should a coach look like today when all this information is coming at you? Coach education is flying. What skills do you need at the senior professional level to make all this work?
I think you've got to be able to communicate. I know it sounds so simple, but there's so many arms that you're dealing with as a coach. Dealing with ownership, dealing with sporting director, dealing with academy director, dealing with media, dealing with sponsorship, dealing with all the things that you have to deal with, especially at our level. Communication's just critical. And then you look at the player communication. You've got to be able to communicate with the players. You've got to be able to have strong relationships with the players. I think then you have to have a vision. If you don't have a vision, it's very hard for people to buy into what you're selling. You've got to be confident. And I say confident loosely because for me, you never want to be perceived as arrogant. So I feel confidence and humility are a huge part of being a head coach from my perspective.
Yeah, let's go there right away. So see this component, because I think there's a lot of this in football at the minute is about, hey, give the players more freedom and structure is holding teams back and et cetera. But to what you just said there about the personality and the confidence, if you go into a changing room and you just say, listen guys, go ahead and play, like they're probably going to want a little bit more than that, I'm guessing. So how do you balance between this is the structure but then giving people more autonomy within that? How does that work?
For me, I think the confidence part is stepping into that room and saying, guys, this is my vision. This is how I want to play. This is why I want to play this way. And this is how we're going to be successful. I think then once you've gone in with confidence, implemented that vision, and then for me, the relationship between coach and player, staff and player, allow for that freedom to come out. So I think they need the structure. They need to see your vision and why it's structured this way. But then they also need to know how they individually can be successful within that structure. Because let's be honest, players are selfish. You know, they want to know how you can make them better, how you can make them successful.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. So when you're going in, and let's just go with it. Let's go Man United to where you're like, okay, he's obviously he's a top class coach. Obviously, he's a world class coach. Obviously, he has a style that he's trying to implement. But I think it's a really interesting case study for like. At what's everyone will have their own opinions about. Oh, listen, forget about it. Do it next year. And he's had some success. Like he's knocked over City. He got a draw against Arsenal as well. But to the expectations, when you're going in with this vision and the results are, it's obviously going to be storming Norman before the performing. How do you navigate around? This is going to take some time, but players, ownership, and fans are going to want something next week.
For me, I think he's gone in, and look, I've never been a coach of Manchester United, so to go into that place with that caliber of player and expectations and eyes on you is something that hopefully one day I'll get to experience. But I think you either go in one of two ways. He's gone in and this is who I am. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to play. And I think he obviously knows the players that he's gone into. But I think there has to be a little reflection period of, okay, is this working? Can I do this right now? Then you get the other guy who goes in, looks at what he has, assesses what he has, and bit by bit starts to implement that style of play, the system that, but this guy is more focused on the culture. And I think you have to, for me, you have to get the culture. The culture at Manchester United is obviously poisoned, and I think until that's figured out, until that's understood, it's going to continue on the same pathway, no matter who the coach is. And I think it's really interesting. I saw a video on Marcus Rashford, and the video was Rashford at United, and it was showing him pressing, taking people on. Then you see him at Aston Villa, and he's got intensity, he's tracking back, taking people on. For me, right there, that shows he's gone to Aston Villa, and all of a sudden the shackles are off and Marcus Rashford is back. So you go back to Manchester United, there's obviously a big problem. And Mourinho said it however many years ago he was there. It hasn't changed since then. I actually went to while I was back home, I took my wife to, they played Rangers in the Europa League. Me and my wife went to the game. And it was so interesting to see it live and see players' reactions, players' movements, how players receive information, from the sidelines, different things, and just what the fans are saying in the stadium. But it's almost an impossible job. But I hope they stick with him, because for me, how he went in and the interviews and the different things he said, he's obviously very talented. And I hope he can, break through whatever is behind the scenes there.
I want to get into the Czech Republic culture and how you built that. Before I do, just off that point there about going into a club, can you do much due diligence in that interview process about trying to see what type of culture you're going into at a professional club?
I think, look, you get snippets, don't you? You obviously speak to people you know, you speak to players that you might know there, you speak to former coaches to try and get an insight into how it's been. You obviously, throughout the interview process, try and gather as much information as you can. What the owner thinks, what the general manager thinks, and you kind of get a picture yourself based on the information that you're getting from various avenues. And then that for me should then decipher how you go into the club based on the information you've received. Because I think if you go in the right way, that can then prepare you to be, at least have a little bit of longevity, at least enable you to get your short-term goals in place, and then hopefully build block by block from there.
Brilliant. Czech Republic, let's rewind, go back, is it December 2019 going in there? What type of culture did you outline? Like, talk about the kind of the culture that you outlined before, about what you wanted to do, and then let's talk about the first 3, 4, 5 months of that. What was that like?
Yeah, it was me going in. Like, I was buzzing to get the Czech Republic job, to get over there. It's obviously been a big club in the USL. Good fans, run properly, good ownership, good general manager. And so for me to go in there, it was amazing. They'd made the playoffs every single year. So, it was kind of, okay, this is a big opportunity. There's going to be a great culture. They've got the playoffs every year, and you go in with those expectations. First year in there was COVID, so it was that in itself was an interesting period for everyone. But for me, it was fascinating to get to know each individual on a more personal level based on the circumstance we were put in. And I say that because that then enabled me to really hone in on, okay, the culture's here. I was expecting it to be here. How do I get it there? So it started then within that period, just drip feeding them information from a stylistic standpoint. But I wanted to get the culture right. I wanted the right personalities in there. And it took a while for me to get to that point, to be quite frank. It wasn't the culture I thought it was going in. It wasn't bad, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it was a terrible culture, terrible environment, far from it. But it wasn't where I believe a culture needs to be to obtain success. And so we went on a journey those first 2 years where, there was a lot of me trying to not go in and blow the culture and, I'm Mark Briggs, this is how we're doing things, I'm the gaffer, blah, blah, blah. But it was a case of going in and softly, gently trying to figure out the pieces that have what I want from a mentality standpoint, that come in every day. And because at the end of the day, your performance on a Saturday is how you train. You play how you train. And for me, that wasn't good enough, which resulted in up and down performances. Now, if you want to be a consistent group, a consistent team, the levels of which you train have to be higher than what you play on a Saturday. Now, we weren't mirroring that. And so that was the first part that I had to change. And that first year, obviously COVID hit. Second year, we didn't make the playoffs for the first time in club history. And that was a critical moment for the club and for me as a coach.
I didn't know that. I didn't know you didn't make the playoffs in 2021. Okay, so at that, let's talk about that, the off season there. How how much movement happened in and out then, or what did you change, or was it in the process of changing anyway?
So no, it wasn't in the process of changing. Over the course of that year, myself and the general manager had spoken, and the owner, and I was kind of relaying my opinions, my thoughts. We got to the end of the season, and Kevin and Todd basically said to me, "What do you think?" And I said, "We're at a crossroads. It's either me or the players. You know, it's quite simple." Fortunately for me, they said, "Okay, you've got a year. Let's see what you can do." The next day, myself and the general manager, Todd, released 18 players.
Wow.
Which was really difficult. But I knew if we didn't do this, mediocrity is going to continue. And mediocrity doesn't lead to success. Mediocrity doesn't lead to me being able to feed my children and feed my wife and keep my house and pay the bills, you know?
Yeah, I can imagine that would have been really, really difficult to let go of the players. But then the football person in me is thinking, it's got to be a really difficult next high risk 24 hours, 48 hours after. You've got to bring in the same amount. So how was the process of getting in the new standard that you were looking for? How was that recruitment drive?
So at the halfway point of the season where it wasn't going how we felt it could, we redefined, like, basically we went back to, okay, this is Sacramento. These are our values. This is who we want to be as a club. This is what we want our team to be known for. So that was the start of the recruitment phase. But we had to go back and really redefine and look deep into ourselves. And myself and Todd and the academy director, Dennis Sanchez, at that point, ownership, Kevin, this is really who we are. This is what Sacramento is, and this is who we need our team to be. And so then we went even deeper. Okay, let's get my game model. This is what we want. And this is how we're going to get the players that fit into that system. So we obviously player profiles, game model, player profiles. We used a company to help us with this model, and we went really deep from a mental side, a mental aspect. Like Todd would ask certain questions that we wanted to bring out. Okay, how are they in the community? Are they going to buy into the community? Because community was one of our pillars. Are they going to go into hospitals? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Then I would ask certain questions, obviously from a football standpoint. You know, how do you receive information? How do you feel about pressing? You know, all the various different things that we felt were really important. Then we use this data group that would then, I'm giving away a lot of details here, that would then, you know, really dive deep into, okay, this is the type of team we want to play, we want to be. These are the type of profiles that we're looking for. Mentally, this is what we're looking for. Then this data company went into leagues around the world that matched up with USL. So we found 3 leagues that we felt, based on the information and the data, players would do well in our market based on they play the same time frame, similar type of level, background. Then we went into the actual player, how that individual, was he on an upward trajectory or was he coming on a downward trajectory in his career over the past 5 years? Obviously, we eliminated then players that had a downward trajectory, based on age was one, you know, different factors. So we said, okay, we're only going to go for players that have an upward trajectory. and that have played in these leagues because they're suitable to USL. Then we separated them into 4 brackets: a starting 11 player, sorry, a top 3 player, starting 11 player, a squad player, sorry, a person who could come off the bench and impact, and then a squad player. Those were the 4 categories. And that enabled us to really limit the risk when signing players. But it was an awful lot of work that off season.
Hello coaches, we'll take a quick break here. As always, thank you so much for the support on Modern Soccer Coach. We couldn't do it without you. As a sign of our appreciation, we have got an upcoming Modern Soccer Coach set piece webinar with Michelle Aragona, first team set piece analyst for FC Midtjylland in Denmark, one of the top teams in the world for set pieces and incorporating data into their processes. Michelle's going to share the secrets to set piece training and set piece analysis. It's a free webinar, March 28th. I'll put the link below. Please register, and please also like this before you shoot off. Thanks so much. Back to Mark. You see that the not negotiations, but the process of recruitment to talking to a player, where again, something that is not really talked upon in coaching or in the media world, that I think it's shaped as, oh, here, you've got to convince player X to sign. But in reality, in that conversation, you're doing due diligence on character, mentality. Can you give us a bit of an insight on those types of conversations that you're checking for that?
I think it's so good now to be able to do calls like this, to do Zoom calls. So a lot of times you're just talking on the phone and you can't see like that, you can't see how they are. You can't see their reactions, their facial expressions. Are they really into the conversation? Whereas now you can get a real feel for someone, and you can also ask pretty deep questions to get a reaction. That'll paint a picture for how they receive information. How are they going to be in the dressing room? Are they going to be a good teammate? You know what I mean? Are they going to, if things go against them, do they have any resilience? Are they going to poison the locker room, or are they going to build the locker room? There's so many things that you can pull out of a conversation if you're prepared. If you're not prepared, those conversations, I like him, blah, 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 and that's totally up to you how you want to be. But for me, those conversations are critical. Again, in getting the squad, in getting the personalities that are going to enable you to try and be successful.
You mentioned there about the culture, the training, the behaviors, Monday through Friday, basically how important they are and the intensity. But in the dynamics of the USL travel, commercial travel, and squad depth, do you have to compromise at all on that, or how do you manage physical loads with intensity?
I think you have to adapt, right? The travel schedule for a USL team is brutal. There's no getting away from that. What we found is we wanted to obviously play with intensity. We wanted to win individual duels. We wanted to be physical. We wanted to run more than the opponent, different little things from a defensive standpoint. So in order for us to achieve those goals, we had to adapt. My relationship with the physical department, the medical department is imperative. And also being on the same page, making sure, yes, I value what you're telling me, but I also have a feel for what X player's feeling. And I also want to value what the player's telling me. So we got to a point where, Rodrigo Lopez, perfect example. Older player, one of the best players I've coached from a brain standpoint, technical ability, being able to execute technical ability. He could do it all, but he wanted to play every single minute. So we went, on a journey of communicating, Luke, Katie, the medical department, communicating with him, me communicating with him, but him feeling a part of that process. So we ended up tailoring his week slightly different so then he could perform at his maximum on a Saturday or on a Wednesday, on a Tuesday, whatever it was. And fortunately for us, doing that is one of the reasons that we made the Open Cup final. So I think he ended up being the top scorer in the Open Cup that year, was voted player of the tournament. But it was due to the management of the loads throughout the week. And we did that with a lot of players and with the team. So instead of doing a drill that we want maximum intensity from for 2 minutes, we did it for a minute. Or instead of, if we're doing a possession drill for 4 minutes, we'd do it for 2.5 minutes. And so we adjusted the times and adapted the times, but we wanted maximum intensity because that was who we were. And if we got that, we knew we would still be able to achieve the objectives at the weekend.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fascinating. The Open Cup run. I remember the game. I don't know whether it was before the final or where you played in Louisville, and you obviously rotated quite heavily. But it comes across as a physical challenge to do that. But to what you're saying, again, it gets overlooked. It's a man management psychological piece because the top players want to play every single game.
Especially coming to Louisville, where, beautiful stadium, top team. The conversations are like, there's so many of the guys that are like, Coach, I'm good. Like, I'll be able to play at Louisville and then I'll be able to perform in the Open Cup. And I'm like, I understand that, but there's a bigger picture. And we made a plan. We made a plan in that off season. This is what we wanted to do. And when we got the squad in place, we made a real emphasis on, we want to do this in the league, but the Open Cup is something that we really want to go after. So if you signed for us that year, you knew that was a big part of that season coming in. And you knew that we have a squad that I believe can be managed and rotated to do well in both leagues. Well, sorry, both the league and the Open Cup. Now, we didn't expect it to go as well as it did, but we did plan for it.
Yeah, it was amazing, absolutely amazing. The piece you talked about, to go back a couple of steps there, about when the role of data, the role in the due diligence recruitment process. Then once those players come in, you've got the culture, and then to assess those players or to manage the, I suppose, review performance or monitor performance. How much is the data being used then? Was that still the company you're working for, or do you then take that all in-house to manage it?
I think look, with data you can go down a deep hole.
Yeah.
And so I think we had certain points of data that we felt were very specific for our identity. And if we did these certain data points, usually we've won the game. Now that year, possession wasn't one of them. And every time we won the possession battle, we lost the game. So there was certain data points that we felt, okay, that one was kind of, all right, that's okay, we're comfortable. And one of we were comfortable being uncomfortable defensively. Because we knew in these Open Cup ties, the further you go, the more uncomfortable you're going to be made. So we wanted our guys to be comfortable not having the ball, comfortable defending, understanding that we have weapons that can hurt you in transition. And from an Open Cup standpoint, that became, our defensively solid, compact, connected, not giving up many opportunities, but ruthless in transition. And so the data points backed that up, and that allowed us to get results when we needed it, really.
What was the Open Cup, the level of MLS players? So obviously your different game plan, having to sit a little bit and like I said, being uncomfortable without the ball and getting moved and a little bit. What I noticed of MLS teams watching against USL is their ability to access spaces and shift you and move you, and then the movement up front. I just thought it really blew me away when I saw it up close. How did you prepare for that without, again, moving your shape back 25, 35 yards?
I think there was we came up against different animals that year in the cup run. Like the first one with San Jose, they had an interim coach. They were kind of going through a different phase. They played a younger team against us, and they brought the big boys on when they were in trouble. So it was a different animal. Whereas we go down to LA Galaxy, and they pretty much, other than Chicharito, they pretty much played their starting group. Douglas Costa, all of them played. So we knew it's going to be difficult, guys. But again, it's about installing belief, and you can install belief based on previous performances, based on the information you give to the guys leading up to that performance, and based on my persona, my message, and I believed we could go there and win, and they then believed that. And then in the game, you need luck. You need luck. There's no going against that. But we scored really early. We broke in transition, and Roro scored. And we went 1-0 up after a few minutes. That installed that little more belief, and then we just kept going, defended for our lives, and was together. And then scored. Jonathan Klinsmann was in goal that night, and Luis Felipe hit one from, I don't know, like I was screaming at him, "Don't shoot!" And it's gone under Jonathan Klinsmann's body and in, and then we ended up taking the game and winning. But I think giving the guys the belief and the confidence that they can achieve something special goes a long way.
One of the questions I also want to ask was there was squad rotation, and the load that it adds is, again, I probably wouldn't have appreciated, but adding one game, I saw adding one game to the month. It doesn't decimate your squad, but it does squeeze you a lot at that level. So with that there, the consistency, like I always thought your teams, I watched you guys definitely in that 2022, we used you as a gauge against other teams. So I watched a lot of matches, and it was always the intensity was there, the consistency was there. Now, in putting these questions together, I didn't know how quickly the turnover was in the squad, so you did that quite quickly. So with that intensity, I guess, what were the keys to consistency?
We had to, I think, look, you go on a journey every season, don't you? We started that year in a different shape. We were playing 4-3-3, and I felt we were getting exposed in transition an awful lot and giving up opportunities we shouldn't. And so I reassessed the pieces we had and looked at 3-4-3, and we ended up going on like a 10 or 11 game unbeaten run when I changed the system. So that automatically brought buy-in to this system, and then once we got that buy-in, we ended up, okay, we're in two competitions. We're at a point where we can't, the same players can't play. It's physically impossible. So we ended up having two teams, essentially. We had a team that would compete in USL, and we had a team that would play in the Open Cup. There's some players that would go between, and different minutes and managing the load. Like one would play 70 minutes on a Saturday and then 30 minutes on a Wednesday, and vice versa. And we started to really manage that, and it was draining, mate. It was draining, but like you got to see every member of that squad that year, because we ended up finishing, I think we ended up finishing third in the league or fourth maybe, and reaching the Open Cup final. And so we achieved our goals. But what that did was players who were a squad player, so to speak, without being disrespectful, ended up becoming players that, okay, he can do it at this level, you know, and they ended up in the league performing really well and keeping us high up, which then pushed the level of the players who were perceived to be starters that were playing in the Open Cup. So they ended up pushing one another, and that balance and that management, they were all a part of the Open Cup. They were all a part of the league. So that got every person in that squad to feel a part of it, to feel an impact that they individually had, which only enhanced the culture, you know, because everyone felt a part of it. So there was none of, I call them energy suckers. There was no energy suckers from the squad. There was nobody who was, you know, negative, because they're all a part of it. They all were involved in the success in both competitions.
Let's talk about youth now. God, I can't wait for this question. Davian Kimbrough, 13 years old. How do you decide a 13-year-old? Is it thinking long term to give them a bit of exposure, or is it this 13-year-old's lighting it up at the level they're ready to go? Or can you talk about the kind of, I guess, the week or two before that with those types of conversations going on?
We obviously knew as a club, the academy is really important to Sacramento, and different players had come through. Davion was somebody where we're like, whoa, okay, like, where's this kid? He went to Europe, played in a tournament, got like top goal scorer, I think it was, in the tournament. And all of a sudden you're getting calls from huge clubs. And we knew right there and then we have a special talent. Now we have to nurture and we have to manage this talent and develop this talent. Myself, Todd, Dennis at the time, spoke to his parents, informed them that this is what we're thinking, this is how we want it to evolve. Now it could go one of two ways. Obviously development, you know, it's not like straight, it's all over the place based on a number of different things. But Davion, we started off having him in 1 day a week. That then evolved to, okay, he can hold his own. He can hold his own, because I remember players coming up to me in the squad, first team players, coach, like, what are you doing? Then bit by bit, they see it. Then all of a sudden, experienced players are going over and talking to him and helping him and trying to nurture him and trying to take him under their wing, you know. But he just had an ability to dissect information given and implement it instantly. And that was one of the things where I was like, okay, this kid's ready. Now, I didn't anticipate on putting him on the field at that point. There were different things that led to, we had injuries, like I can't remember, we had a few games coming up where it was kind of like, well, okay, we don't have another forward. And then the game, I think we were 2-0 up against Las Vegas. We were 2-0 up. He's on the bench. I had one substitute remaining. And I'm like, well, why not? You know, it's going to help his development. It's going to help him grow. And he touched the ball 3 times. His first touch, someone played a ball into him. 3 players were closing him down. He went in, opened his body up, took those 3 players out the game, and played a through ball first time with the outside of his right foot. You know, and just little things like that, where you're like, he's got what it takes, you know. Now we wasn't anticipating the explosion of, a 13-year-old and what are we doing and this and that, but it was nothing to do with publicity or anything like that. The kid's a special talent, and we'd done all the things and put all the things in place where he was ready for that. And everybody was on the same page, and he did well. And I hope he continues to thrive.
What's your conversation with him afterwards? Like, did you find yourself saying, come on in with your mum and dad and I'll tell you, were they involved in every conversation?
So you have to speak to the parents, right? He's still a young kid, but we formed a special bond, I guess. And so a couple of days I would see him down a little bit, and so I went and spoke to him, and he said, "Coach, like, I wasn't expecting. I just wanted to play football. I just wanted to be on the field. I wasn't expecting all the other stuff. My Instagram went from 1,000 people to 10,000 people, and I'm getting messages, and I don't want to be on social media." And so, we spoke to his parents, and we came up with something that helped him in that regard. There's so many different things that happened where we had to be on our toes, and we had to help him. We had to help the family. We had to talk them through certain scenarios with an understanding that we want what's best for him.
The point you made there about the social media, it's actually something that people think that because they're young brands, or that they want that celebrity status, but a lot of the people, it does set them back a lot, doesn't it? It's very difficult for a young person to handle the shit that they're dealing with online.
Exactly. I think that for anyone to handle some of the things you have to deal with, and you've got people behind a keyboard saying X, Y, Z about you, it's hard to see. It's hard to read. Then people sending messages directly to you. It's something that we have to be very careful with our youth, with the development, with the kids, with my kids. When they get to a certain age, it's going to be something that I'm going to have to face. But it's something that is a huge part of the world today, and something that I think if you're going to develop a player, you have to develop their understanding of that side of the world, of that side of the game.
Completely agree. And I'm the same. I'm probably about 5 years away from my kids being in that world, and I'm petrified of. It actually infuriates me as a society that we don't have regulations in place, because I honestly think, like, we do the mental health push once a year and say good to talk, but yet it's good to talk crap about someone 364 days. I just think that's wrong.
Exactly, and I think the genuineness of people now has gone.
Yeah.
And the being able to have a open, honest conversation has gone now. Because people don't want to have that. But I think this social media, this world that we live in, it stops communication, because gone are the days where you have a conversation, yet it encourages backstabbing, it encourages writing a message on the computer and slaughtering someone. It's wrong. I think it was Australia or New Zealand. I read something a couple of weeks back that children aren't allowed social media now until 16, which I thought was really interesting. And personally, I quite like that.
And again, because it brings in revenue for clubs and it's clicks, and I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. Like, I've benefited from clicks as well, but at the same time, you're right. There's clicks, and there's an echo chamber of antisocial behaviour that is somehow spread to hitting young people really, really hard to the extent of we don't know what impact this is having. It's scary. Yeah.
I think you just have to prepare them as well as you can,
Okay, last couple for you because this has flowed. Coach development. Obviously, we talked about Mr. Cruz working for you and doing great things, and obviously Danny Dickio as well. We've actually had him on years ago. Had Danny on, he was brilliant. Two questions here. One's about coach development and trying to help your staff, get to where they want to go, which is not easy. But also, what does it take to work for you, Mark?
That'd be a question, I guess, that Danny could answer. I think genuine people. People talk about having good people around you. I've been very fortunate that I've had very good people around me, very good staff. In Wilmington, in Matt Glazer, then going to RSL, and I actually had Liam Miller. God bless his soul. He was my assistant before he passed away. Danny Cruz, Jameson Olave, Danny Dickio, all good people, and I think when you have good people, that enables you to form relationships, to be able to have honest conversations, to be able to not be offended within those conversations. And I think if you look at all those people, Danny, Olave, Matt, Deech, all of those people, they're honest, have humility, and they have a work ethic. And I think if you don't have a work ethic, you're not going to work for me. And we're not, you need to work, you need to put the effort in, you need to put the hours in, and I'll then give you, it's not the Mark Briggs show when you work for me. It's the collective effort of a group of people pulling in one direction. And I think maybe that's why people have gone on to be successful coaches. Yeah, I'd like to think so anyway.
Is it hard? I mean, again, it sounds idealistic. It sounds great. Hey, listen, we'll go on a journey and then I'll do well, you'll do well, you'll kick on and get a job. But there's obviously a real, you have loyalty, and there's a long-term process to it as well. You don't want someone looking at footballcareers.com every morning when you walk into work. So how do you manage that? Like, okay, you've obviously got aspirations and goals, but there's a job to be done here as well.
Yeah, I think for me, every assistant coach that I've tried to hire, I'm certain I understand myself, and I understand where my strengths are, and I understand where my weaknesses are. Now, for me, in an assistant coach, they should fill those weaknesses. And I shouldn't be fearful, nervous that my assistant coach is better than me in certain areas. And I think as a coach, you have to be comfortable employing people that sometimes are better than you in certain areas, because you have an understanding that, okay, I'm really good in this area. I excel in this area. I've got it covered, but I need help here. Then all of a sudden, your assistant brings you to that point. Now you have a real chance of implementing a vision, implementing a style, bringing out the best in people because of that. So I think, in my opinion, I'm always going to hire good coaches, good people, because it makes me better. I'm never going to hire someone and be worried about they may take my job, because if I've done my due diligence, and if I've hired a good person, I know they're not those type of people coming in. And I think too many times people worry about the wrong things, which then has a knock-on effect in their success.
Brilliant. All right, last one for you. Coaches that are obviously the development of the game over here, we've now got a group of coaches who are ambitious at doing what you're doing, working at the professional level, working MLS, USL, the opportunities that are there. What advice would you have for that kind of mid-20s, early 30s coach that's just getting started, that's saying, listen, I want to work at the highest level. How do I do it?
I think don't look, clubs are hiring younger coaches now. That seems to be the way that the game's going. But for me, don't rush to be there. You know, it's one of the most ruthless, hard professions to be in for a number of reasons. And I think don't rush to get there. Too many times people are, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Oh, how's he a head coach? You know, and there's this like rush and there's this desire to get there, and it can be taken away really quickly because you're not essentially prepared. You haven't taken the steps to put yourself in a position where you may be able to have longevity. So for me, I would think I would do the hours, do the work, and don't rush to become a head coach. Learn, grow, take as much information as you can. And if you feel you're ready to be a head coach, then, you know, you're obviously ready, but don't rush.
Outstanding. Mark, I didn't even get through half my questions. This is part one.
Hopefully it's at least, it's at least been as good for you as it has for me, mate.
Class. That's been great. Hey, thank you so much. We'll do it again.
Definitely, mate. Look forward to it.